start off by saying that the remarks made by my opponent in the first minute of his video were made at an alarmingly fast pace. I had to watch the video 3 times to even make sense of some of what he was saying. May I remind both the judge and my opponent that this is not a policy debate where speakers are trained to speak fast. I therefore ask the judge to ignore all remarks made by my opponent within his first minute, or at least weigh them less than other statements made, because if this debate were allowed to be debated at that pace, it would become policy debate, and were the judge to vote in favor of such a debater who uses that pace, it would turn all debate into policy debate and ruin all other types. It is also unfair for debaters who cannot speak that fast, because the opponent will not be able to rebut well within that time. However, after the first minute, my opponent slows, and I request that he maintain that pace for the rest of the debate. Now, my opponent for some reason states that if he can prove that alternatives to animal testing are inadequate, he will win. Well, this is false. It is the proposition's job to construct a plan that will reduce the harms of the status quo, which are the intolerably high numbers of animal death and animal cruel treatment. My proposed plan reduces these harms. My opponent argues in favor of animal testing because alternatives might not be adequate in specific areas. However, he does not present a counterplan that bans the testing in specific areas and keeps it in place for areas where alternatives are inadequate. He simply attacks my proposed plan and thus establishes his stance to maintain the current status quo of animal testing. This won't reduce the harms of animal testing. My opponent plans to keep killing 8 million animals a year. He plans to continue forcing animals, obviously without their permission, to test toxins, poisons, and other failed science experiments. Half of these animals will die. My opponent wishes to do this, despite the fact that animal testing yields only a 25% accuracy rate. That's a 75% failure rate. My opponent seeks to continue funding animal testing, while money could be used more efficiently and pumped into alternatives which will better advance science and medicine than animal testing. My opponent says that alternatives are not as effective, yet he cites an article from 1994 to support this claim. That was 19 years ago. Epidemiology and stem cells are currently ready to be used for research and testing, according to research from Oxford University. Finally, my opponent quotes Bernard Rolling as saying that we as humans have an obligation to all beings. If we have an obligation to all beings, then we cannot kill other beings in this wasteful testing. And that's for my opponent's argument. Also, my opponent's speech exceeds the time limit by 30 seconds, and I ask that everything said after the 5-minute mark be discredited. Within the first 5 minutes of his speech, he fails to address my statements that elucidate the economic advantages of banning animal testing, and thus he concedes that the money being used for animal testing research is money that should be used for funding alternatives to animal research. In short, my plan to ban animal testing will stop ending innocent animals' lives and allow money to stop being wasted. This is a benefit to the economy and to medicine and science, because a limited supply of research grants will be given to more effective alternatives. We will also be saving lives. And may I continue that even in my opponent's extended speech to 5 minutes and 31 seconds, he chooses not to refute the economic advantage of my speech, but to attack alternatives' adequacy by citing articles from 5 and 19 years ago. Thank you for your time.